Hi, everybody, and welcome to our channel again. We've got Nisheeta and Bhavana. We had an amazing conversation the last time we were talking to each other, and you guys got the opportunity to eavesdrop. So uh, we're gonna do it once more, and who knows, maybe it might become a whole series only. But today we're gonna have a chit chat again, and since it is Lord Ganesha's time, it is going to be evolving around Lord Ganesha and what he stands for. So Nisheeta is a dear friend, and many times when we go to Bombay, we stay with her, and she really pulls out all stops to make us comfortable, and so many of her friends, they have come and done the courses with us in Bombay, and Bhavna is just such a pleasure to talk to, and she's extremely successful in her corporate career, and it is just amazing the kind of insights and ideas that she gives about normal everyday things. So yeah, let's get started. Nishita, Bhavna, over to you.
Thank you, Bava. And the feeling is very mutual, both toward you and Bhavna. So, picking up on what you said about this beautiful Ganpati festival, I was watching it last evening, and it just struck me the whole energy behind it was just so palpable externally and internally. And I thought to myself, I said, if only we can imbibe this really within us every single day in our lives and in our work. And that's what I'd really like to explore amongst the three of us today. And Bhavna is one of my favorite people because Bhavna is somebody who has always challenged status quo. So being a woman and a an exceptional mark after her consulting days in a male-dominated engineering firm, taking two of their businesses from being India-centric to putting them on the global map. And whenever I think of Bhavna, I always wonder, Bhavna, did you invoke Lord Ganesha's blessings?
Thanks, Nisheeta and Baba. Thank you for the very kind words. Get goosebumps as I heard you guys on that. I think you rightly said I have been truly blessed with all the opportunities that have been coming my way. And with all the gods that we all believe in, I think Ganesha is among our favorites. And like Baba rightly said, what can be another good time than these 11 days when he's visiting our homes? So yes, I have Ganesha at home, and I think that benevolent presence is amazing. The energy, like you said, Nishita, it's palpable. There's a certain excitement around the house while we are all not exactly socializing or bringing in family and friends in, just among the family that's at home. We have Ganesha with us, and it's an amazing feeling. And I think world over, I realize that while, as in terms of the religion that I follow, there's like hundreds of gods. It's always been simplest to explain Ganesha. You call him the elephant god, and everybody's like, okay, that one. So he seems to have had a universal appeal. And I think that would be, our intent today, to see what we can, imbibe from that universal appeal that Ganesha brings for all of us. And I think that whole thing around him as an elephant god is where I'd like to begin. And I know, Baba, given all the wisdom and all the learning that you have lots of stories and lots of thinking that's gone behind all the myths and legends behind this elephant god. So maybe we can start at the basics, because as an elephant, what does Ganesha symbolize? So maybe start at that and then, take it further in. So you want to share with us, Baba, your thoughts on what elephant and the god therein believes?
Yeah. So while you were speaking, I just thought, yeah, Lord Ganesha is the best PR agency among all the gods. The other ones can learn from him. But yeah, the elephant, in the ancient days, it is said that if a man really wanted to praise, really wanted to adore a, a lady, a woman, he would say, "You are like an elephant, Gajagamini. You walk like an elephant." Now, please don't try that today. Okay, people will not get it. But what it means is that you have that majesty. If you've ever seen an elephant walk, uh, do you notice how they walk? They are such majestic creatures, and nothing can stand in their way. When the elephant is walking, everything is just moves aside. Remember that scene from Jungle Book, the Colonel Hathi's march, and they're just walking. The elephant parade is just walking, and it doesn't matter what animal, what plant, nothing, everything just moves aside, isn't it? So that majesty and that ability to remove any obstacle, I think that is what the elephantness of Lord Ganesha is all about. Uh, Also, if you look at the
Is
eyes,
that why you is
yeah,
that
go
why
ahead.
you think Ganesha is meant to be at the beginning of everything? Why people invoke Lord
Correct,
Ganesha first?
correct.
But tell us a little bit more about that energy. What is that Ganesha energy that they're invoking?
The Ganesha energy is the energy to remove all obstacles that could possibly come. Like, let me be like an elephant, which will just get rid of all these obstacles that may pop up in front of me. Yeah, but it doesn't end there. If you look at the eyes of the eyes of the elephant are very innocent, and yet the head is very big, right? So the head normally represents wisdom, intelligence, and very often we will find that intelligent people are also very chalu, you know uh, but it is
Stunning. Yeah.
really, really rare to find intelligence with innocence. And so that big head represents, with those eyes, represent that here is intelligence personified, but with the innocence of a baby, both going together, right?
Right. Yeah.
So in that way, the man would praise the woman, saying, "You are like an elephant. You are so intelligent, yet you are so innocent. When you talk, when you speak, who can tell you no? Who can speak no? Who can say no to you? You are like an elephant. Your walk is stately. When you walk, everything and everybody gets out of the way. So that is what the elephant signifies in our Vedic scriptures. The Vedic scriptures were written in a very interesting way. I like to compare them with Mozart's music. Now you have to understand that Mozart used to be commissioned to write his music by kings and queens who were very well versed in music, right? Yet his tunes are such that anybody can enjoy them. Tararam, pararam, parararam, tiraram. That's a Hindi song also, isn't it? So all the music that he has written is very accessible to the common person, yet it has the complexity that a true connoisseur can appreciate, right? So that is the other aspect, where there has to be that depth to in the stories. There is the depth that is there for a highly evolved spiritual person to appreciate, yet the stories are such that even a child can understand. And Amar Chitra Katha story could be read to a 7 or 8 year old, 6 year old, 5 year old, and they would also love it. And that is the genius of our Vedic scriptures, that the stories are told in such a way that it can appeal to a really mature, spiritually evolved person, as well as to a 7-year-old.
Right, right. And I think the symbolism you talk about with the elephant nest, Baba, just going a little back to what you said a bit earlier on, is, I mean, it can be applied to everyday life. It can be applied to our professions. It can be applied to our personal lives, like you rightly said. And I was just thinking, so one way of interpreting it can also be that, an elephant, I mean, while all the obstacles move out of the way, is also somebody who doesn't go around things, but will walk across them or will deal with them as it moves. And I kind of get reminded of what we call, there's this theory around conflict resolution. And I'm sorry to bring in a little bit of a soundingly jargon, but it's pretty simple. There are like 5 modes of how each one of us in our professional lives deal with conflict. So one of those modes is avoidance. And then of course there's, accommodate, compromise, compete, collaborate, so it kind of different degrees of what you give in versus what you expect the other person to give in to. And what comes to my mind is, an elephant is somebody who would not avoid, but would kind of take on what comes in the path and deal with it and then move on, rather than either go in the other direction, move back, or give up on it. So I think that's a pretty kind of powerful message, if I see, of what Ganesha brings to us. So while we bring Ganesha home to remove the obstacles, I think he brings in a learning on, you never have a problem in your life that comes your way which you can't deal with. The universe almost ensures that you have it in you to be able to deal with the problem. And I think that's what Ganesha teaches you, that don't run away from it, but take it on and deal with it, because I'm there to make sure you have something which is within your capacity.
In fact, Gurudev once said that every problem is like an elephant. It seems very, very big, and the tail always comes with the elephant.
And it comes at the last.
Sometimes comes. He says all problems that you are facing have solutions. Only thing you might have to look for them. It's very interesting. I had a conversation on our channel with a craniosacral of world repute. His name is Michael Kern, and he said something very similar in terms of healing. He said that there is no such thing as an incurable disease. There are only incurable people. So many times the solution to the problem, like you rightly said, is inbuilt into the problem. However, if you have the right attitude,
Right.
You will find that and you will be able to deal with that, and it will make you a better person.
Yes. So in fact, you said no incurable people. I was going to say incorrigible people. It's like the other side of the same coin, incorrigible. But I think
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Nisheeta.
No, when I'm just putting together what you both are saying, and I'm thinking of this metaphorically speaking, and that's why we started out with energy, right? And I was just trying to put my finger on what is really this Ganesha energy all about, and it's so palpable that it's this dynamism, it's this enthusiasm. I mean, you can feel it, and it's when I put that in the context of work, I think there are some people that sometimes slip into what I call the passivity trap. And then there are others that are pioneering. And to me, the difference between the two is this Ganesha energy. So it keeps us from slipping into the passivity trap. It keeps us, energetic, for want of a better word. And that leads to us being pioneering and many other things. So to me, in my mind, it's really the starting point for any leader, actually. And why leader? I think it's the starting point for anybody, anywhere, to be successful, whatever they are doing. Energy and dynamism, right? That's where it all begins. And so that's why I was almost wondering, is that why perhaps people start everything with Lord Ganesha?
Right. I think that whole thing about what's within us, which Baba, you also alluded to, like, that we have it in us to be able to take on something, and the energy, like Nisheeta, you put it. I'm kind of reminded of the story of Kartikeya and Lord Ganesha, and competition or something that their parents put across to them for some fruit. Baba, I mean, do you want to just tell us a bit more on that story?
Story was that it's a very interesting story. Um, it was that Parvati has this fruit. It's just, you can say, she says it's the fruit of knowledge, the fruit of true knowledge. And both the brothers want it. So then Shiva says, no, let's have a competition. Whoever can, uh, let's have a race. He said, let's have a race. Whoever can go around the world 3 times fastest, that person will get the fruit of knowledge. All right. And Kartikeya, being one of those go-getter types, gets on his peacock and turbocharges the peacock and just flies off. And Ganesha, to, he's just sitting and he's having his modak. So he says, yeah, I will do it. And Kartikeya circles once, and Ganesha is still having his modak. And Kartikeya comes the second time, and then Parvati says, come on, do something, I have some competition. So Ganesha says, okay, all right. And he gets up and he folds his hands and he goes around Shiva and Parvati 3 times and finishes those 3 circulations before Kartikeya lands. And when Kartikeya lands, he finds that Ganesha has already got the fruit and already eaten it. And says, what is this? He didn't even leave the place. He said, no, Ganesha says, I think the world of my parents and I went around them.
Right.
Now, there are so many different significances that you can, Shiva and Parvati are considered the Shiva and Shakti, the creative and the manifest and the unmanifest, which is the sum total of the universe, the manifest and the unmanifest. So when Ganesha goes around Shiva and Parvati, he is really going around not just the planet, but the world, but the whole universe. Right? The message for the children is, look, he thinks the world of his parents, so kind of be obedient. So you get it. There are so many different nuances to it. Yes. But this is where most people know the story till. Yes, there is a second part. And the second part is really interesting, where Kartikeya, of course, is really upset about this. I mean, come on, I upgraded my peacock. I went all over the world, this, that, and the other, and I don't get the fruit. And so it is said that he shaves off his head and he becomes a monk because he's so dejected and so upset. And at that time, the Mother Divine Parvati, she goes to him and says, what are you upset about? Why are you so upset? He says, you are the fruit. You are knowledge. And that's when Kartikeya, really realizes, oh yes. So there are many beautiful nuances and aspects to this very cute little story.
Yeah. So one that I get reminded, the minute you talked about a turbocharged peacock, it kind of reminded me of where I used to work. And, in the professional life, and I'm just kind of connecting this to what was like a daily occurrence, there's a problem and everybody's just gonna get in the middle of it. There'll be this war room created. Everybody's out there, throwing darts at each other or on the whiteboard, and we are going to make this happen today. And I think sometimes it's just important for at least a leader or a set of team members to just kind of sit back, think through it, and then go for it. And I think that takes a tremendous amount of strength to not just react to everything immediately, but to actually absorb it, to think through it, and then to figure out. And I realize that the solutions, or maybe not the solutions, but the path, I don't think solutions are so easy to come by all the time, but the path to a solution is always better when you've kind of thought through it And I like Ganesha's approach, where he's like, chilled out. I'm not saying we all can be that ways, but yes, if you react versus think through it, sit back, because like we said earlier, the answers are there. You just need to figure out the path. And I think the more agitated or reactive we are, the tougher it is sometimes to get to that path. And I think when you talk about Parvati telling Kartikeya, you are the fruit, or the knowledge is within you, it kind of goes back to how much of self awareness do most of us kind of imbibe. Do we really know what we want, or how is it best for us to deal with things, versus are we just most of the time all over the place, and net result people in our vicinity are also all over the place. And I think that's something we can really take away from this story, that it's always important to know what's within and kind of sit back and work through that before jumping into, okay, let's just reactively go after it.
Bhavana, when I coach some people on a very leadership position, this is one of the things I talk about, and it's really interesting how you brought this up. And I say that it requires strategy and tactics. Where strategy is you sit and think, and tactics you get out there and act.
Right.
And the couplet that I say is this: I say that strategy without tactics is the slowest way to victory. But tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat.
Right. I like that. That's nice. I'm going to make a note.
So yeah. And about, like you said, he just goes away, and he doesn't have that, okay, let me sit here and think about it. What should I do? What is the good strategy here to follow?
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you very rightly put it that very often when we are given a problem, uh, we want to get on to the solution part of it without thinking too much about it. In fact, why limit it to a problem? Bhavana, one of the things that I do when I coach, and my niche is really bringing clarity to people.
Right.
It is so sad, and it is so often that I have seen this, that people when they are 35 to 40 years old get to where they want to get to. They have realized their dream only to figure out that this is not where they wanted to be.
Not what they wanted. Absolutely. I think that's bang on.
Right? And so this is what I coach on, and my entire coaching is about figuring out vision and figuring out reason. What is your vision? What do you really want? Do you really want it? Are you sure you really want it? Until my clients are like, okay, yes, I want it now.
Right.
But until you are at that point where you are clear about where you want to go, it is so bloody difficult to get there.
Hmm.
Like what I tell them is, if you are in Delhi and you want to go to Chennai, what ticket would you buy?
Hmm.
And they'll say, of course, Chennai. And I will say, would you buy a ticket to Bombay then? No, obviously not. Or would you buy a ticket to Kuala Lumpur? Absolutely not. Why don't you buy the ticket to Kuala Lumpur? Oh, because I want to go to Chennai. Right, then what is it that you want in your life, and what are you doing right now?
Right. I don't know that I need to go to Chennai. I think that's where the issue lies. Right? Yeah.
But a lot of this is about, emotional intelligence, and you use the word self-awareness, and you spoke about the head and the large ears and of Lord Ganesha, and it's the self-awareness that it embodies. And Bhavna, you might like this. We're both consultants, right? So we love 2x2s. We just can't live without them. So Daniel Goleman, who was the father or master of emotional intelligence, had researched it extensively, and all his work at Harvard and its affiliates point toward 4 different aspects of emotional intelligence. So he thinks of it around 2 different axes. So one axis is really about, think of it as self and other. He called it self and social. And the other axis is about recognition, which is about being aware, and about regulation. So then you combine the two axes, and then you've got these 4 quadrants, right? So your self-recognition is really all about self-awareness, which, you know, Lord Ganesha's head is really all about. And that self-awareness, yes, it is about being aware of oneself and what one, you know, perhaps where one wants to go, or what one can do and what one can't do, and what one's blind spots could be. But it's also about confidence, which is that whole aspect of, you know, the elephant just walking through every obstacle. And he actually defined it that way. He said self-awareness is both of these. It's the awareness and it's the self-confidence. And then he moved on to the regulation bit. So self-regulation is really about my self-management, right? So it's, yes, there's an aspect of self-control in there, but there's also this big aspect of, you know, optimism and the set of things around it, initiative, optimism, etc., which is, again, as I'm thinking about it, again, what Lord Ganesha embodies, right? The dynamism, the optimism, the, you know, no obstacle will come in the way again, the drive. And then you move to the third bucket, which is, so we had other, right, or social recognition. So social awareness is what he called it, and that's about empathy. So it's about tuning into yourself and tuning into organizations. And I've seen so many leaders be so good at what they do, but then failing just because they were unable to tune into how their organization worked, right? It's not about the structure. You know, if you get the first 3, the fourth is quite a derivative. So that's about social management, you know, relationship management and how you manage others. But if you get the first 3, it's fairly easy to get the fourth. But it's so beautifully, Ganesha reminds me so beautifully of the first 3 buckets.
That kind of also reminds me to another fallacy of the way a lot of you know, professionals or people in organizations may work, which is, you know, you can't know everybody as deeply as you'd want to, so they end up working a lot on perceptions. So, you know, and I was thinking about, you know, Baba, you talked about, you know, the elephant gods, the small eyes of an elephant, and I think once you shared with us about the big ears, and how it's, I think, only an elephant who can kind of cover his eyes with his ears. And I remember your learning to sharing with us was, you know, how you don't let your senses always get the better of it. And the reason I brought that up was because, you know, in organizations, we have a lot of this perception, you know, that works, right? It's because, like I said, you know, you can't know everybody as deeply as you'd want to. And people form opinions, people form biases based on what they see or what they hear. And I think that, to me, you know, is something which, as leaders, several of us should work against, which means the minute you think you're forming a bias, here, you know, think about, you know, the elephant, and think about how we should not let our senses get the better of us, but go deeper inside to understand better. So, you know, your point, Nisheeta, around the empathy piece, you know, not just with yourself, understanding better, but also with others, not just, you know, working with very superficial, high level kind of information and then using that to form opinions. So Baba, I don't know, in your view, has that been something which you've seen lots of people struggle with, where, you know, opinions are based on perceptions and that's the beginning and end of time?
Yeah, happens quite a lot.
Happens quite a lot. Okay, so just shifting gears, Baba, what, there's a lot more to Lord Ganesha. You know, there's, in his 4 hands he holds several things, and I remember you talking about symbolism on those things. So tell us more on those.
You know, he holds quite a few things in his hands, and one is the modak. And the modak is sweet, it's tasty, right? So Ganesha is also called the god of knowledge. And so he gives you knowledge. Now we are talking about knowledge with a capital K. You're not talking about, mathematical equations or chemical formula. You're talking about knowledge of the self, right? Who you are. So that knowledge Ganesha will grant to you. Now, on the other hand, he has a rope. So now you will go to him to get that knowledge, he ties you. Now you cannot go anywhere. Right? It's like you need to finish your education. You cannot run away. Right? Uh, Again, I'm reminded of the quote on one of our craniocycle therapy books where it said that either drink deep or drink not at all. Either drink deep or drink not at all. So you need to go, once you have the taste of this knowledge, if you just go and start giving pravachans then you have lost the battle. You have to be there and you have to imbibe it completely, totally, right? And in that, sometimes you are going to come across all sorts of obstacles. And though the knowledge is supposed to make you happy, it can actually turn around and make you miserable. And that's why he holds a spear, a kind of a ankush, it's called, where he pokes you and says, hello, what's the matter with you? Come on. You have got the ultimate, you have got the highest. What are you moaning and groaning and crying about? Right? So these three things, that the poke to awaken you, if you are sinking into some sort of self, the knowledge to enliven you, and the rope to ensure that you stay and complete the syllabus. It does not allow you to go until you are enlightened.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah.
This is fantastic, and this to me is this is Lord Ganesha embodying the very core hallmarks of a great leader. I mean, there are leaders who are good, right? And then there are leaders who are good in certain situations, but then they're not good in others, or they crash and burn, or they're unable to deal with, very different contexts. But what separates a good leader from a great leader, and this is what all of leadership theory really points to, and what all the research shows. So what differentiates the good from the great is really one's ability to have a portfolio of what you might want to call leadership styles, and then have the ability to switch between them. And when I hear you talk about these things in, Lord Ganesha's hands, and what they could embody, it's, in my mind, it's all these leadership styles. So leadership theory actually distills them down into 6 core leadership styles. And it says if you've got these 6, you're going to be very, what we call agile nowadays, which means you're going to be very, very effective. And it's fairly intuitive, right? Think about it. If you're different with different people and in different situations, people will respond to you differently. So the numbers show that your team will respond to you 70% better if you are a great leader, which is if you have all these styles and adjust between them. And that 70% translates to 30% better business bottom line at minimum, all else being neutral. So you don't have to do anything. You just literally almost need to remember Lord Ganesha and what these 6 styles are. And it's all these things that you spoke about, the rope, the spear. So, there's the directive leader, right? Great in crisis management. Do as I say right now. So that's the spear. And then there's the prescriptive leader, which in my mind is, it's the rope. Come here. Do as I show you. Do as I do. And it's required sometimes, but you can't do it with everyone or all the time. And then, of course, there's a visionary leader, right? Who's setting the vision. And that, of course, is Lord Ganesha's head. That symbolizes the visionary style. And the Modak, of course, is the affiliative leader. So come, you've done great work, pat on the back, and let's sit down, have a chat, and you need that sometimes. So it's this beautiful mix of short-term styles and long-term styles. And so, when I first thought of Lord Ganesha in the context of leadership at work, it was that really Lord Ganesha is the hallmark of leadership effectiveness.
So yeah, I'm so with you on this, Nisheeta. I mean, you put it as a leadership style, and I was thinking about, just going back and like a team meeting or a discussion, and we can apply it to any setting at home, at work. And it's like the team comes to you with some piece of work done, and they're looking to your inputs on it. Obviously, as a leader, the expectation is you kind of goad them with more ideas, or kind of lead them into more different ways of looking at things. So that's kind of the knowledge or the modak. So that's my simple tactical way, as Baba put it, while yours was the strategic way. Within that discussion, there's obviously another time where you just don't feel people have put in enough effort, or are willing to look at things in a certain way. They're kind of close minded. So you kind of obviously get a little hyper, if I may say, or a little agitated, and you're like, guys, it's high time you kind of went back, thought through this, and then maybe come back with a little more data, etc., etc. And people feel a little chided. Of course, you need to have the knack of how you look at it, how you kind of communicate it. And to me, that's kind of the spear in this whole thing. And then of course there's the rope, because at the end of the day, they know that as the manager or as somebody who's senior, you do make a difference to how their career moves, or how their benefits, compensation. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, we are humans, we're working for something in return. And yes, there's the whole blessings aspect of it, which is the appreciation people get. So I was just thinking, you put it in a very nice leadership style manner. Whereas for me, it's like in every discussion, all of this happens. So, it's almost like Ganesha sitting with his four arms, hands in every discussion for me. So yeah, I just thought I'd kind of share that.
To me, actually, the blessing is the democratic approach, where the leader is giving a platform to his people. He's distributing power, and I really feel, especially actually at a time like this, particularly, everybody has been slipping into this directive approach, right? It's a crisis. It's been a crisis at work. So there's anxiety, and it's the natural tendency to slip into directiveness. And I really feel now more than ever is not a time to do that. Now is the time to lean on purpose. Now is the time to be versatile and do all those other things that Lord Ganesha embodies. You want to lean on purpose. You want to give a platform to your people, because the two put together can change what you have and what you will be.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think, Bava?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking also on this, the whole big belly. Baba, is there some symbolism on Ganesha's big belly? I mean, we all land up with some of it, but yeah, not as big.
The same as Santa Claus.
Say more.
Ganesha is a happy god.
Right.
We've always heard of all these gods having fights and quarreling with each other, but I have never heard a story of Ganesha where he's upset or angry about anything, isn't it?
I was also googling for an angry Ganesha.
You don't get it, right? Because his belly is that Santa Claus belly, ha ha ha, the laughing Buddha, and the belly also signifies acceptance. So there is a lot of acceptance, but Ganesha's belly has a snake around it.
Mm-hmm.
And the snake in Vedic scriptures represents very, very high amount of awareness. So it is not a passive acceptance, okay, things are happening, this is happening now, it's okay, all right. It's not that. It's a very active, participative acceptance where, okay, it's like this, let me see what I can do about it to make it even better. So it is an acceptance. Now on our Art of Living courses, we say that acceptance is the first step to solve any problem. Normally, if a problem comes, we either complain about the problem or deny the problem. If you are in complaint or denial, you simply cannot take any rational, intelligent action. You can't, right? So the first step we say is acceptance, but it's not that passive acceptance. Oh, there is a thief in my house. So okay, now Baba has said accept situations and people as they are. So let the thief. It's not that way. It is a very active, participative acceptance. Okay, yes, my boss is a jerk. When you accept that, you get the peace of mind, to the ability, the resource to think about what should be my next action, right? And then that action, whatever you take, is a no regret action. See, sometimes have you noticed you have even miserably failed at something, but you say, I have no regrets. If this happened again, I will do it exactly the same way.
Right, right.
And other times you may have succeeded big time, but you still feel, oh, I could have done that. Oh, I could have done that. Oh, I should have done that. And the difference between the two approaches is this basic acceptance. Yeah? I'll tell you one more thing about this. Dinesh and I were teaching in two places very, very often. This is almost 15 years ago. And we would give almost equal time to the volunteers there, to the group over there, and they were almost the same size group, more or less the same age group, more or less in the same kind of circumstances also. So there was really, it was almost like two sets of people doing almost the same things in their life. Maybe one is a software engineer, basically kind of thing. And we found that one place we would get such big courses, big numbers, and in general, we would have tremendous success over there. And the other place, even with similar abilities, similar backgrounds, they would never be able to manage the success of that first group. And then we really sat and thought about what can we do to bring this other group up to speed, because there is really no reason why they are screwing up so much. They are sincere, they are dedicated, all the ticks were in place. And then we realized whenever we would put a challenge, whenever we would put a problem in front of them, the first group would immediately get into, okay, let us see how to do it. How can we make this happen? So if I say, okay, guys, after 2 months, I want a 500 people course to happen here, they would start strategy, they would start planning, they would get into the action of making it happen. Whereas the other group would spend so much time convincing me why it cannot happen. Until finally they would get to the point that, okay, Baba really wants this to happen, so we now need to work. But they have wasted like half a month or half the time that they had in convincing me why it should not happen. So even if they made it happen, there was so much, they would feel tired. They would feel, oh my
Negativity.
God, work. Yeah. Whereas the first group would say, okay, done, what next?
Right.
And we found that this was a simple case of acceptance. The leader is telling you this needs to happen. Now you can either spend time arguing with the leader, convincing him why it should not happen or why it cannot happen, or you can spend time picking the leader's brain and figuring out how to make it happen.
It's interesting. It's almost like there's so many of these contradictions, and through that so much learning. Like you said, the intelligence and the innocence, and then that awareness along with the happiness, not just sort of blind happiness, but being both alert and happy at the same time. And that's what really makes you effective in your functioning. And then of course now what you talked about, this whole contradiction, right? So being accepting but yet not passive. So it's a lot to learn from there.
Nisheeta, maybe you can make axes,
We had our quota of 2x2s today.
There is more consulting in Nisheeta than I have had. Yeah,
but
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'd love to hear the story of Ganesha's origin.
Oh, that's one of the most ridiculous stories in the scriptures ever. The story of Lord Ganesha is one of the most crazy stories that you can think of. And it said that Parvati was taking a bath, and Lord Shiva kind of intrudes, and she doesn't like that at all. So she wants her own bodyguard, so to speak. So the dirt that had come off her body, maybe she was an environmentally conscious goddess and didn't want to waste all that dirt, so she kind of made an idol out of that, and breathed life into that idol, and lo and behold, you've got this cute, strong guy, and she tells him, "You go outside and wait, and don't let anybody come in." And she continues with a bath. So Lord Shiva comes along, and there's a little kid standing there, and Shiva says, "Let me get in, let me go in." And the child says, "No, you can't go in. Mommy has said no." And he doesn't get the hint. Lord Shiva is sometimes in a hurry. So Lord Shiva says, "Come on, now move aside. I want to go in. Get out of the way." And the kid just refuses and refuses and refuses. And no, you cannot move in. And so Shiva just gets angry and chops the kid's head off. And of course, Parvati is very, very upset. She says, you have killed my son." And Shiva is, of course, justifiably confused. "Son, where did that happen?" And anyway, she is very upset. So she says, "All right." Shiva says, "Okay, then all right, I will do something about it." And he sends one of his ganas, one of his flunkies. "Okay, go and find me a head. Find an elephant. Find an animal and just chop the head off." So that fellow goes and finds this elephant who is sleeping and chops the head off and brings the head. And Shiva puts the head on the beheaded child, and the child comes back to life. And Parvati is like, "I had this handsome young guy, and what you have made, what is this big?" And Shiva says, don't worry, everybody will love him, and he has got the blessing that before we start anything is started, he will be prayed. He will be invoked. And Parvati is just slightly mollified and says, "Okay, there is that the other fellow has a peacock. So for his vehicle, what are you going to give him?" And maybe they had a little bit of a mouse infestation. So, Shiva gets a mouse out and does the Cinderella fairy godmother thing, and, makes the mouse big enough for Ganesha to ride him as his vehicle. And as you can see, the story is really kind of ridiculous, right? But the symbolism behind the story is really beautiful. Is Parvati, the name Parvati, Parvati is considered to be the daughter of the god of the mountains, right? And mountain in Vedic scripture means celebration. Like the earth itself has risen in celebration. How you go, yay, right? Like, so the earth itself has risen in celebration. So Parvat means celebration. So when the celebrative aspect of yourself gets dirty, then what she does says, see, when you are feeling sad, when you are feeling depressed, when you are feeling down, what do you say? "Give me my space. Nobody come in. Give me my space." So she puts the ego and says, "Don't let anybody come in." Isn't that what we do? When we get upset, we kind of put our ego in front and say, now I don't want to talk to you. Now just let me be. Right? That's what Parvati does. But Shiva is the protector of that celebration. So what he does, he cuts the head of the ego, and then he puts the elephant's head. And we have already seen what the elephant means. So he removes ignorance and puts knowledge with innocence. And then the mouse is considered the one who can nibble, right? So Ganesha is the god of knowledge. So the veils of ignorance that surround us, the Maya that surrounds us, the mouse nibbles it. And that's how knowledge enters into our life and establishes itself. That's the story of Ganesha.
Wow, Baba. I think that was, you rightly said. I think the earlier part of the story is probably what we read most in comics in our childhood. but this whole, detail around what Parvati symbolizes, the mouse, Shiva, and, the ego, I think that's a pretty powerful one. So thanks for sharing. For me, there's one more takeaway. As you shared this story, it kind of came to my mind, which is that, we always believe leaders are born, or several people believe leaders are born. And I think as I think about Ganesha, he's not born, he's made. So to me, leaders are made, and in fact, he's reborn. So, when you become a leader, you can make a leader out of yourself as you imbibe a lot of characteristics. There's a lot of things that people look up to somebody, and when you look up to somebody is when you kind of look at that person as a leader. And I don't mean to go into what I believe are those skills which make somebody a leader. I think that's probably another conversation at some time, in some time.
Of course.
But I think the to me the powerful piece here is, a lot of times, something goes wrong, and somebody who's become a leader, like literally risen up the ranks, made a space for himself at the top, or whatever that top is, or like you said, very successful. I think sometimes something happens and it pulls you down. There's a failure, and you stop looking at yourself as a leader, or you feel that others don't perceive you as a leader anymore. And then Ganesha is reborn. So there is the significance that no, there's nothing that cannot be mended, repaired, or brought back to life. So I think for us, for me, a big takeaway with the birth of Ganesha is, leaders are not born, they are made. And let nothing pull you down, because you can always be reborn. And I think while Ganesha was just reborn once, or at least that's the only story you told us, but I think you can be reinventing and, kind of coming back even bigger and better all the time.
Yeah, that was what I wanted to say. It's just upgraded way.
Upgraded way, absolutely. So great. Thanks, Baba, for sharing the stories and the insights. As always, wonderful for this conversation. And thanks for the opportunity and making the time for it. Thanks, Nisheeta, for having all of us together over here. Really appreciate the insights. I'm going to mull a little more on those 6 leadership styles. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. And what has struck me at the end of all of this just now is that we're all really accomplished in our respective fields, but I think Lord Ganesha is the new leadership coach.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was really nice being with the two of you and sharing these insights about Lord Ganesha and how his story and his symbolism is so relevant to today's time, day, and age, and that anybody, regardless of whether they are mending a broken relationship or trying to run a company or making a difference to a team, can learn so much from what the ancient rishis have breathed into this amazing, lovable God who is literally the laughing Buddha of the Hindu pantheon. You know, so I would like to end by saying that I think the best thing that I ever seen on Lord Ganesha was this T-shirt at an airport shop, which said Lord Ganesha. And he's got his beautiful Lord Ganesha, very cute looking, Lord Ganesha. It says 50% elephant, 50% human, 100% cute. Yeah, and that is one of the most endearing T-shirts that I'd ever seen about Ganesha. So thanks a lot, both of you, for giving us this time for our channel, and for all of you who have been watching. And I'm sure you've enjoyed this show. And to make sure that you don't miss any other videos, ensure that you like, comment, subscribe, and press that bell button so that you get a notification in your inbox when next Dinesh, me, and our friends are online talking about all sorts of things. It was brilliant being with you guys. Jai Gurudev. Ganpati Bappa.
Moria.
Moria.